In the middle of the ocean, a woman's body suddenly falls into the water. She floats for a few seconds and opens her eyes in panic. Then suddenly Brandon wakes up and realizes that it was a bad dream. He is the governor. Brendan and Ava arrive at the airport where Ava meets her friends Jade and Kyle. They are going on a trip together. But the boys are not happy that Brandon is coming along, but Ava explains that her father won't let them leave without a security. Once they board the plane, Ava and him sit in the back for privacy, and Ava, she notices that there are very few passengers in this plane, which Ava finds quite strange. After they take off, the plane shakes a little, but this is considered normal. After some time, the plane starts shaking again, and the engine is seen heating up. The pilot tells the passengers that they accidentally hit the bird and there is nothing to worry about. However, soon the plane starts shaking again and the engine catches fire. At the same time, the pilot tells everyone to buckle up. He says, and as everyone begins to fear for their lives, a part of the engine breaks and flies off and hits the side of the plane, resulting in the death of a passenger. Due to the hole in the wall, the pressure in the plane increases, and everything inside the plane starts flying or shaking. All the bags fall and hit people's heads. Passengers who are not wearing seatbelts get out of their seats and fade out of the plane, even if they are not wearing a seatbelt. While trying to hold people's hands, within seconds a wall blows down and a huge hole is created in the side of the plane, causing hundreds of people to fly to their deaths. Brendan tries to catch a flying man, but the wind is very strong and the man also goes flying. Another man tries to hold the seat, however the metal does not hold on for long, and some of the seats fall down along with the men sitting on them. A flight attendant looks after the falling man, tries to help, but ends up falling in with him too. After losing most of its passengers, the plane starts falling rapidly and crashes into the ocean, where it immediately begins filling with water as Brandon grabs an iron. Due to its impact, the seat slides forward and the passengers are crushed to death. The plane continues to sink for a few minutes and finally stops after getting stuck in the seabed. Due to the plane getting stuck at an angle, a plane behind the airlock is closed, so Ava and her friends and the flight attendant Daniel are still alive, although Kyle has a broken arm. Everyone is staring at the water and worried after hearing a strange noise. Suddenly, Brendan comes out and Rosa, and her grandmother brings Maddie to safety. Maddie is unconscious, so Danilo starts chest compressions, and after a few minutes, Maddie wakes up. Then Rosa asks about her grandpa, and Brendan has to tell her and Marty. Sadly, he couldn't save her. Now everyone starts to panic, so Brendan immediately takes over the lead to calm everyone down. Aloe means they are safe for now, so they have to stay calm and rescue them. The team will have to wait. Ava checks her phone, but there is no signal in the ocean. She says there is a hole in the plane and they should swim out, but Brandon says their chances of survival are very slim. So Danilo tells them that the pilot must have called for help before the crash, so help should come soon. Later, Brendan says they should have backup oxygen. Danilo tells them to be in the back of the plane for emergencies. There are 2 tanks, but when they check them, they find them empty. At the same time, Marty remembers that one of the passengers had a medical oxygen tank, so Brendan goes to find it before he leaves. Marty tells him Brendan dives and swims down the corridor and investigates the passengers who have died in their seats. He finds Marty's husband's hat and takes it, fails to notice something floating outside the window, then he finds the oxygen tank and takes it before checking the hole. He decides to swim further to look for something else, and then gets a shock. Suddenly, they are attacked by a shark which has come in from the hole. The shark immediately bites Brandon, and he continues to fight it and tries his best to get rid of it. Meanwhile, the group gets worried. Suddenly, the waves disappear, and Brandon resurfaces and tells the others to stop, showing some serious wounds on his body and breathing heavily. He gives the oxygen tank and cap to the others before apologizing to Ava and is then pulled back into the water. Everyone sees the shark's tail, and the shark eats Brandon. The group runs away to hide in the employee area in fear. Marty then cares for Kyle's hand and explains that she used to be a nurse during the war, and that's how she met her husband when Marty took the bone. Kayla screams in pain as she is pushed into place and applies a splint using some thick magazines and bandages. A helicopter is flying by in search of the downed plane. They have priority orders because they know that there are many victims. The governor's daughter is also there, but they don't see anything yet. Now back to the survivors, they hear something creaking and the plane shakes for a few seconds, indicating it could fall at any time. Z, very negative, starts to think, and Danilo opens the oxygen tank that Brendan got. At the same time, they see that the water is turning red, and from the noise, they realize that sharks have come in to eat the drowned corpses. Suddenly, the plane shakes a bit, and they can see Sat floating near their window, hitting parts of the plane as they move. Rosa is very scared, and Ava tells her not to worry as she is sure they will be saved, although the helicopter has yet to land. Nothing is found. and there isn't much fuel left beyond that. The group keeps an eye on the water level and realizes that there are still 3 or 4 hours left before the water recedes, though they hear the sound of metal creaking. And they see some water leaking from the roof, so they can't be sure if the plane will stay long enough. Then suddenly the plane starts falling and keeps sliding for several minutes, and a bunch of rocks keep falling until he doesn't get trapped again and no one gets hurt. But due to this angle, the water level in the plane rises because the sea floor is not as solid as they thought. The group agrees that they have no choice but to swim out of the plane. They have to find a way to distract, and Rosa says she learned in school that Sarex don't like bubbles, holding their breath for that long. Access is also a problem, and Kyle suddenly remembers that some passengers were traveling with scuba equipment. Danilo explains that those things are in the baggage hold, and there is a hatch that will give them access. Although the oxygen tanks would probably be empty otherwise, they are not allowed to bring them on the plane. Ava thinks the scuba equipment might still be useful, but Jet is too pessimistic, so she pretends she needs to pee and hides in the bathroom where the plane creaked. Hearing this, her condition worsens. When she comes out, Ava teaches Rosa that there is nothing wrong in being afraid. Outside, the helicopter only has 15 minutes of fuel left. At that moment, they finally find parts of the plane floating, so 2 divers search. They jump into the water to start. It doesn't take long for them to find the plane, and as they get closer, the group starts pointing out the window. One of the divers swims towards them, while the other points out the plane to the survivors. He comes to the window to tell him that everything is okay now. Suddenly, the shark comes after him, and he doesn't pay attention beyond that, so the group tries to warn him. The diving hole looks around, but he doesn't see anything but when he looks towards the plane again. Sark dragged him away and killed him. After hearing a lot of noise above the plane, the group looks out the window and sees the diver's leg floating to the other side, recalling the second dive. The group checks the corridor, but no one turns up, so they assume the man has been killed as well. The helicopter outside is almost out of fuel, so they have no choice but to leave. At least they have coordinates and backup that will be arriving. Now on the plane, Ava tells them that if the other diver is dead, they can take his oxygen tank. She looks underwater and sees a shadow, but can't figure out what it is. Jet tries to get a closer look by standing on the seat, but slips and falls into the water. The group gets worried because they can't see him, but he comes out laughing because he was joking even though he wasn't out in time. The shark arrives and finds her and grabs her with its sharp teeth. As Jade struggles against the shark's attack, the group grabs her hands and pulls her back and moves her to safety away from the shark. They discover that Jet is missing a leg, so Mati sets up Rose behind the curtain to take care of the wound. Using the same cloth, Mati creates a device to stop the bleeding, and Jet cries when he finds out. Realizing that she will no longer be able to participate in any sports, Ava still hopes to get out. Ava decides to find scuba equipment. Daniel opens the hatch and discovers that the luggage hold is flooded, but Ava dives in anyway. She gets scuba, and suddenly she gets shocked seeing an octopus, and at the same time Flair also faints when other people do not see any light. They become worried when they see Ava, but thankfully Ava soon returns with the equipment. The group opens the bag to find diving suits and masks, but there are only 4 suits in it. At the same time, they hear the sounds of something hitting the plane. A noise is heard and they go to look out the window, but there are no divers around, so it must be a shark. By the time they turn around, Jade is already dead. She is desperate and tries to do chest compressions, but Madi pulls her back. Explaining that he is now dead, suddenly the plane starts sliding down again, but this time, it stops quickly because the cockpit breaks and acts as an anchor. The water is rising rapidly, so they need to get out quickly. While remembering Rosa's fun facts, he plans to use the small oxygen canister from the emergency mask to inflate bubbles on the shark, still has to swim out long enough to break the clock, and retells a story from his childhood. He tells him about the incident that left him traumatized and that he is a poor swimmer ever since, though he agrees to try with the encouraging words of Iba and Rosa, and then manages to get all the oxygen he can without going too deep into the water. The sharks are still hitting the plane, and the ceiling starts to crack. Now the group starts wearing suits, and Marty wants to go without the suit because at her age, she will slow everyone down. Jade has to say her final goodbyes. After this, the survivors get into the water and see that the plane slowly starts sliding downwards again. Suddenly, the cockpit breaks and falls into the ditch, meaning the plane will also fall soon. Madi lets Ava go first, and Rosa goes first. Asking to be taken with her, the girls start swimming down the corridor and find that it is blocked by sharks, so she quickly opens the oxygen nester to scare it away. Once the path is clear, they move on. They stay and are soon joined by Kyle and Danilo. When the water inside the plane rises, Marty sees everyone leaving and knows she won't make it, so she stays put and hopes to be reunited with her husband. At that moment, Cal gets scared and swims back to put his head in the small air pocket. Danny Lou tries to go back for him, but suddenly a shark comes out from between the bags and attacks Cal. Babe Danilo swims to meet Rosa and Ava, who find the dead driver and take his tank so they can refill his lungs. Ava then takes Rosa and Danilo to the tank. She sends her out of the hole along with her, but when she too is about to leave, a shark blocks her path. Eva swims back and stops so the shark swims back inside without noticing her, although its tail catches her mask. Then Ava realizes that more sharks are coming from the other side, so she starts swimming towards the front. At the same time, the plane starts falling rapidly, and the water pressure starts preventing it from moving, but luckily Ava. She grabs hold of the seats and pushes herself off and manages to escape through the front hatch just before the plane crashes into the ditch. Ava now begins to float up, though she soon runs out of air and falls unconscious. Her body apparently stops floating, but thankfully the water pushes her upwards, and she comes above water and she immediately wakes up and starts breathing while Ava is not looking at the others. Ava panics, but at that moment the helicopter returns, and she is eventually pulled out of the water. Daniel and Rosa have already been rescued, and when Rosa asks about her grandmother, Ava gives her the bad news. To say the last goodbye to her grandparents, Rosa throws her beloved plushies into the water and falls into Rosa's arms. The movie ends here. If you liked the movie, please like and subscribe. Thanks for watching.